there he is.
Hi, John.
Okay, hold on. Let me make him a co-host and see if he can unmute.
There we go. Look at that. Look at that.
Oh my gosh,
Awesome.
I know how to skip to be because I mean, I got to tell you, John. So I started this book from a recommendation from another coach in the network. And from the minute that I picked it up until actually I just started listening to it again, and we were just saying, like, I have the hard copy too, because it's been so good, like so good for myself as an overthinker. And I had like my husband, who's like the king of overthinking, listen to it. He was outside cutting the grass, listening to it. I had my brother-in-law, like anyone who will listen, I'm like, you need to go and get this book because it's been so good for me that I can't stop talking about it. Before we get into that though, you guys, I just want to introduce him and give him a proper introduction. So let me make sure I pull that up really quick. I don't miss anything. Hang on one sec, you guys. Okay, so I know everyone on here has read his book, but I'm going to give him the proper introduction. It's Jon Acuff. He's a New York Times bestselling author. He's written 7 books, you guys, including his most recent Wall Street Journal #1 bestseller, Finish, Give Yourself the Gift of Done. He's an INC Magazine Top 100 leadership speaker and has spoken to hundreds of thousands of people at conferences and companies around the world, including FedEx, Nissan, Microsoft, a couple other, hopefully Beachbody in the future. You'll be able to kind of come to one of our summits. That would be such an awesome gift. Yes, absolutely. We will. I know a lot of us are pushing for that. His large and highly engaged social media following. So he's got over 300,000 followers on Twitter, you guys. I've seen some of his tweets. He's hilarious. Make sure you're following him. 187,000 Facebook followers, 125 Instagram followers, and more than 90,000 email subscribers who, subscribe for his humor, his honesty, and his hope. He lives outside of Nashville, Tennessee, with his wife and 2 teenage daughters that you hear him talk about in his book. His latest book, Soundtracks, which we're going to talk about today a lot, was released in April 2021, and it's already a bestseller. This is the one that really got me accustomed to Jon, and I've started to listen to his other books as well because of this book, because it was such a game changer for me, as well as so many of my teammates, my family members. Because what you talk about is just real life. How many of us are overthinkers, and we don't know what to do to shut it off, right? So I recommended it to everyone, and I'm so, I'll be honest, you guys, I'm fangirling because before I even got on here, Jon, I had to listen to your book again. I think it was chapter 3 where I'm like turning the dial down because I'm like, gosh, I've been building a business for 12 years and I've done big speaking events, but for some reason in my head, I was like, oh my gosh, this is so scary. Like, this is someone who I'm like looking up to. And
no, not at all. Not at all. Yeah. This will be super chill, super fun. Like, not at all. I'm honored to get to do it. I love the stuff you guys are doing. It's so I've done one Beachbody virtual event maybe 2 years ago. So yeah, the answer is yes. I love what you guys do. I love getting to talk to Beachbody coaches because you're already in motion. There's some audiences I have to convince to get in motion. When I talk to a Beachbody team, they're like, we dare you to keep up with us. Like, you guys are already doing stuff. So that's so fun for me as a speaker. So yeah, I'm honored to be here today, and we'll answer as many questions as you guys have. Anything I can do today to help or serve or amplify anything in the book, let's do it.
Ooh, I like that. Okay, well, let's do it, guys. All right, so we're going to try to knock out as many of these as we possibly can. And guys, if you have questions, you can drop them in the chat bar. And at the end, if we have enough time, we'll do about 30 minutes, Jon, and respect your time. But feel free to put them in the chat bar, guys. And if we have time, we'll kind of circle back to those. But the first one is, how does overthinking impair our goals? So I know a lot of us as coaches, we have different goals. How does overthinking impair that?
Well, I think there's a couple ways. A really easy exercise that I didn't put in the book, but I would put in if I could go back, is if you want to figure out if you have a broken soundtrack, something that's not helpful, write down a desire. Write down a desire. I want to grow my team. I want to lose 5 pounds. I want to run a 5K. I want to start a podcast. I want to write a book. I want to date my husband more often. Whatever it is, write down a desire, a goal, a hope, and then listen to the first thoughts that come next. Listen to your reaction, because one of the things I teach is every reaction is an education. And so that's a really simple, easy way to go, oh, wait a second. When I think about this goal, all these soundtracks come in and get in the way. So I think that's a fun activity. It's a simple activity. It's just, spend 5 minutes, spend 3 minutes on it. And so that's one of the ways they kind of impact you. And then the other is like, one of the worst soundtracks, in my opinion, is perfectionism. So I meet people all the time that will say, I have a fitness goal and I want to be, and they'll go, I haven't done anything for 10 years, but my goal is by the end of the month to be in the best shape of my life. And you go, wow, that's going to be that's really challenge. You just set yourself up for a really big challenge. What if instead we looked at it this way? And because we have a hard time not doing it perfectly, we end up quitting. We just wrote a post the other day about why is every used Peloton sold in nearly perfect condition? Like if you look on Craigslist at listings of Pelotons, it's always like barely used, perfect condition. And a lot of times it was they had a perfectionistic goal and then they didn't have any community. The goal was way too wild and too big. They had all these broken soundtracks in the way. And so I think that's one of the ways that overthinking gets in there, is that even when you plan the goal, you try to go from like, I've never written a book to I'm going to write one in the next week. And you go, wow, that's like one of the soundtracks I teach around fitness is I'll meet people that say, I've been doing Beachbody for 10 days. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. And I'll go, well, how long did it take you to gain the weight? I'll say 10 years. And I'll go, so you gave the problem 10 years to develop and the solution 10 years to come true. Like that's really unkind. Never give the problem a year and the solution a week. But that's what we sometimes do. And so I think that's another example of where overthinking kind of gets in and wrecks your goals.
I was like taking notes because that's so true. I mean, how many times do we set ourselves up for these big goals, and because we can't be perfect, we just stop instead of saying it has to be that needle moving progress that we focus on in order to, eventually achieve that. So good. Okay, so you talk a lot about the power of symbols to remind us of things that are true. What are the 3 things every successful symbol has in common?
Yeah, so a symbol is a great way to tie a new thought to a visible thing that you can remember. Like the problem is we take these new soundtracks, these baby soundtracks, these new beliefs, and we put them up against this old soundtrack that's been doing push-ups in the prison yard. And it's got 5 years, like if you feel like you're the worst mom when you're 4 seconds late to the car rider pickup line, it's partially because you've listened to that so many times. Every time you listen to a broken soundtrack, it's like putting a handle on it. It just gets easier to pick up the next time. And so you've got this new one. You said, okay, I'm going to become a coach. I'm going to get in shape. I'm going to do something with my life. And it's new. And if you want it to last, you tie it to a symbol. So the 3 things it needs to be personal. It needs to be connected to you. Somebody else's symbol won't move your needle. Like it needs to be something where you go, this matters to me. This is important to me. So personal. The second one is it has to be visible. You have to see it. If you write something down on a piece of paper and you put it in a drawer, it's gone. Like your day is too busy. You've got too much going on. It has to be visible. I mean, for me, like I'm looking at, here's one of mine. So this is a soundtrack I wrote down. This was August 27th. It says, ask for more. That's not sexy. It's not hooky. It's not amazing, but I found myself undervaluing myself in negotiations. And so I said, I need to remember to ask for more. Like the things I do have value. My time has value. My expertise has value. So this is a symbol. I put it on my wall. I see it 100 times a day. So it's personal, excuse me. It's visible and it's simple. It's not complicated. And so my favorite example of that, like if you look back at something like the Nike Lance Armstrong Live Strong bracelets, when you met somebody, they were personal. Nobody ever said, I wear this because I hate cancer, the disease. Like I have a psoriasis necklace. I have earrings about, like allergies. Like they'd always go, no, my uncle struggled. Like my mom passed away. Like it was personal. The second thing, were they visible? Nike could have made it taupe. They could have made it skin color. They could have made it like gray. They instead made it bright yellow. And 3, it was simple. It was easy. No one's confused by a bracelet. No one is like, so you're telling me the arm part goes in the whole part here? Like I'm so confused by my bracelet. So that's what you want your symbol to be. And so for me, like here's one on my desk. This is a pine cone. I picked this up on the street in Jackson Hole. They were free. They were everywhere, 100% free. Just picked it up because I was going to Jackson Hole 2 weeks before the book came out. And I knew that it was going to be really easy for me to overthink the pressure of the book and be physically present in Jackson Hole and mentally absent. And we've all had moments of stress where we're physically there, but we're really not there mentally. So my soundtrack for that trip was don't miss it, don't miss it, don't miss it. And that became this thing I said. So I picked this up to remind myself, wow, when I was in Jackson Hole, I felt present. I felt present enough to see a pine cone on the street and go, that's different than the pine cones I have in Nashville. Like, how interesting. So now it's on my desk to remember, oh, that's right. I don't want to miss this. So it doesn't have to be some massive thing. And the joke I always do about symbols is every brand in America knows symbols work, and they've known it for years. Like Yeti found a way to make us put stickers on our cars to tell people how we refrigerate things. Like nobody did that in the 90s. Nobody was like, I'm an igloo guy. Just want you to know how I ice things. Like I'm a big ice things guy. Just want but they found a way to turn their brand. And I'd say the same thing is true of Beachbody. Like part of like, you have a brand, you have a symbol that connects people to your long-term solution and your long-term culture and your long-term community. So that's what a good symbol does. And one of my favorites that I just saw the other day, Jordan Fernie, she's this amazing person on Instagram, just a genius. And she posted that, she said, I realized a few years ago that if I was going to live the life I wanted, I had to be uncomfortable or awkward at least 4 times a day. Like that's what it was going to cost me, at least 4 times a day. So she had a little kind of custom perfume made, and she put the word uncomfortable on the bottle. And every time she puts on that perfume and sees the word uncomfortable, she remembers, oh, that's right. Like I'm stepping outside my comfort zone. I'm okay. Like that's genius. Like I love that. So that's what I mean by symbols. But there's, for me, like I have a candle that I light when I write a book, because it's another like, oh, it's time to go into the writing mode. Like I try to have fun with it and try to enjoy it along the way and be creative.
I love that. I just wrote that down. So apparently I need to be awkward and uncomfortable 4 times a day. I've got some work to do.
Yeah, isn't that a fun goal though? Like that's a really fun, like, oh, versus going, I must have failed today because I felt awkward. No. Like if it's a goal, you go, yeah, like somebody, I have a wall, I'll just twist that. I have like on my wall right now, there's 70 different soundtracks. So when I hear one from somebody I like, when I think through one, like I'll throw it up there. And somebody the other day told me, okay, you get one of 2 things, growth or control. You don't get both. You get growth or control. So which one are you going to choose? And that was good, because as I grow my team, as I grow what I'm doing, I feel like, oh, I'm losing some of that control that I like. And so for me to realize, oh, that's fine. Like that's part of growth. That's helpful. Somebody today posted on my Instagram, we were talking about perfectionism, and they said one of their soundtracks is all or something versus all or nothing. And I was like, that's brilliant. Like all or something. Like how many times have I met somebody that goes, my goal is to run 3 miles today, every day 3 miles, but I only have time for 2 today. So I'm going to do 0, because a perfectionist would rather get a 0 than a C-. And you go, well, 2 is a lot more than 0. And so imagine if one of your soundtracks was all or something, like how forgiving that would be for the days where you don't have the perfect amount of time to do what you need to do. Like that for me, like, and it's not mine. I didn't write that one. Somebody posted that on my Instagram, but that's part of it. Soundtracks is about awareness. Like part of what's been fun about the book is how many people have gone, I'm teaching it to my kids. Like we're talking about it as a family. Because once you realize the metaphor, the power of soundtracks, you realize individuals have them, teams have them, cultures have them, couples have them, families have them. Like one of our soundtracks as a family is we don't show up hungry. And what we mean by that is when we go on a road trip, we're visiting friends, we don't roll in the door as a hot mess at like 6 p.m. and be like, also feed us, unless dinner's part of it. We'll stop an hour before we get there and eat dinner so that we show up as good guests. So that's a micro soundtrack. We don't show up hungry. For a macro one, which is be considerate of other people. So that's one we're trying to teach our kids, like, hey, that's a family soundtrack. So that's what's been really fun, is to see the different ways people have used them.
I love that. And I put on these necklaces. It's like my kids' initials. And then
Exactly.
When you talked about it, I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't even realize I was doing this, because when I look in the mirror, I remember I'm growing this business. I'm building this business for my family and honoring my priorities. So when you said that, I was like, oh yes,
that's exactly right. Like
exactly, right. So
I love that, because I think most people watching this right now, their initial response might be, well, I don't have any symbols. But then when you pause for a second, you go, wait a second, I do. Like I have that thing, I have that picture I keep, I have that plant on my desk. Like there's things you're already doing. And part of it is going, how do I develop self-awareness, and how do I continue to choose the things I want to think about? Like I have that choice. Your thoughts come by one of 2 ways, chance or choice. Like they show up and you hope they're good, or you choose them ahead of time and go, these are the ones I'm going to work on. So it's choice or chance. And I think choice wins every time.
So good. Okay, so what are the 3 questions people should ask themselves about their thoughts? When you went through this in the book, I was like, yes, because when you go through these questions, you're gonna get, if it's a negative thought or something that's not helping you, by the end of the 3 questions, you should be able to be aware of that. And I think that's the biggest part.
Well, what's been fun with the questions are what I call Trojan horse questions, because the words aren't special. Like when you see them, you're like, oh, I know those words. Like you're not going to like, but when you ask them and actually sit with them for a second, you go, oh, wait a second. Like this is a Trojan horse. It was one thing and it turned into another. So the 3 questions are, is it true? Is the thing I'm telling myself about myself true? Is the thing I'm telling myself about my friend true? Is the thing I'm telling myself about this opportunity, the world true? Second question, is it helpful? When I listen to it over and over, does it move me forward or pull me back? And the third question is it kind? Would I say it to a friend and still they'd want to be my friend? And what's been fun about this is I've done all these podcasts for the book. And in the middle of the podcast, it always turns from like a topical conversation to like a heart conversation, because the podcast host will sit with the questions. And just the other day, this host said, oh no. And I was like, what? And he said, I've had the #1 podcast in my space for 9 months. And the soundtrack I've been listening to is You're Just Lucky, You're Just Lucky, You're Just Lucky. And he said, if a friend came over and had worked hard for 9 months on something, I would never tell them you're just lucky. So if I wouldn't say it to them, why am I saying it to myself? And here's the thing. The reason you ask all 3 is that sometimes the thing is true initially. So like, let's say you go, I don't know how to be a great Beachbody coach. That's true at the very start. That's fine to say, that's true. But is it helpful? Like the more you tell yourself that, I don't know how to be a good Beachbody coach, I don't know how to be a good Beachbody coach, does that help you move forward? Does that help you investigate? Does that help you connect with others? No, it pulls you back. And then is it kind? Every time you say that to yourself, are you being kind? I mean, that to me, those 3 questions in that order, if you'll ask them. And then the problem with is it true is that it starts out as true, but it tends to deteriorate. So for instance, you might say, I don't know how to be a great Beachbody coach. That's fine. I would ask you to add the word yet. Like I love the word yet as a future word, but you say, I don't know how to be a good Beachbody coach. The problem is over time, negativity comes in and changes it to, I'll never know how to be a great Beachbody coach, or everyone is a better Beachbody coach, or I don't have the tools that it deteriorates. And one of the things in my own life that I saw when we talk about kind of like soundtracks deteriorating, I made it through a big crisis at work. A couple of years ago, I had an ad agency, it blew up and I had to save the day. It was a terrible situation, but I came in, I was able to fix it, and it was really hard. And I learned a lesson. I can function well in a crisis. Cool, but true statement, good lesson. But over time, it deteriorated. And that's always what happens. I've never met somebody that said, yeah, I just have positive thinking naturally. Like I don't have to be intentional about it. In the same way that nobody's ever like, yeah, I was binge watching Netflix. And I just looked up and I was doing burpees. Like, I don't even remember really doing it. Like, I just woke up and I had abs and I was like, what, how'd that happen? Like the ab fairy visited me last night. So what happened over the years was my soundtrack changed from I can function well in a crisis to I function best in a crisis. And that's just one word, like well to best. And then it turned into I need a crisis to function. And that's a really terrible spot to be, because then I'm using stress and anxiety and crisis as a fuel. And we've all been around leaders who are like that. They're amazing at putting out fires, but when there's not any fires, they feel worthless. And so they start a fire and they self-sabotage. And my wife eventually said to me, this is 4 years ago, she was like, you're a jerk for the 2 years when you write a book, and you're a jerk for the 2 years when you sell a book. And that's not going to do it. Like she said, I'd rather you be a happy plumber than a miserable writer. So you need a new soundtrack. And she was right. In order to do this big, massive project, I had to stir up all this chaos, I was miserable to be around. And so learning, seeing your soundtracks, seeing that they can kind of deteriorate over time and going, if it's not true, if it's not helpful, it's not kind, I'm going to retire that one and write one that I would really love to be true in my life.
That's so true. I'm thinking of like things in my life where I'm like, yeah, it's time to rewrite one right there. Right. So yeah, so true. Okay. So talking about 2020. So we just came out of craziness, right, guys?
Yeah.
Do you think that overthinking increased during 2020?
1,000%. I thought like 2020 was catnip for overthinking. And the reason why is that right now, everything is a thing. Like that's the soundtrack I've been telling people, like everything is a thing. And the example I love using is a couple of weeks ago, somebody went to shake my hand. And right before he shook my hand, I was like, do I refuse? Do I fist pump? Do I give him an elbow? I was like, what if I shake it? But I immediately put my whole arm up to my elbow into a vat of hand sanitizer as if to say, excuse me, sir, while I scrub off this deadly pandemic you just tried to murder me and my grandparents with. And then I started looking around the room. I was like, is this a handshaking room? Like, is everybody doing it? I was like, what does that say about us politically? Like, you know what I thought 2 years ago when somebody shook my hand? Nothing. I shook their hand. But now every little part of your life has all these extra layers and opportunities to overthink and be stressed. And so, yeah, people ask me, like, did I write the book in response to the pandemic? I 100% didn't. The book was finished last March of 2020. I just feel like I've been very fortunate that a lot of people have said, hey, I need this because the last year I've really overthought my career. I mean, one of the soundtracks I give parents, especially moms, is I've had so many moms go, I'm the worst at virtual school. I did such a bad job at virtual school. I'm the worst at virtual school. And I always go, yeah, you should be. You've never done it. The worst time to learn something new is during the middle of a global pandemic. It just is. Like, it's the worst time to pick up a new skill. You're probably terrible at hang gliding too. Like, if you've never done that, you're probably like, and so a soundtrack I gave everybody I talked to was, you should write down on a piece of paper, this is my first global pandemic. Like, you should write that down, like put it on your fridge, because it's not your 10th. Nobody on this call right now is like, well, actually, John, I've done this like 10 times. I'm kind of like, no, like you should give yourself the grace and forgiveness to go, yeah, like things did not go well when I had like my 4 kids at home while we all worked. Like, I was not good. Like, we couldn't get into Skyward or like the 17 different systems the school used that were poorly run. Like, this is your first global pandemic. Like, that's okay. It's your first global pandemic. So things like that, I think, are helpful as we come out of what it's a really challenging season.
I think one of the things that you said in the book that kind of goes along with what you were just saying is like one of your superpowers was like learning to be kind to yourself. So like looking at 2020 and just saying like, be kind to yourself, give yourself some grace, right? Mm-hmm. It's like when we go in those like overthinking spinning wheels, like we start judging ourselves so harshly.
I've never met somebody who said, like, you hear people say like, I got to get my stuff together. I got to get my life together. I've never met somebody on the opposite side that said that's what worked, where they shamed themselves into long-term change. Like, here's the thing. Shame is a fine, like very quick fuel. Like, it will change a little bit of your life. Like, you can do that, but it's a terrible long-term fuel. Like, it empties you out versus filling you up. So like, and you've seen people that came into Beachbody with this idea of like, this will prove to somebody something. And you go, no. Like, this is about you. Like, it's not about that other person who probably isn't even watching. Like, and if that's your fuel, like, you're going to burn out sooner. Like, it has to be about who you are. It has to be like, and so like, shame is just a terrible long-term fuel. So when we beat ourselves up and go, well, I just got to get my life together, it doesn't turn into long-term hope. It doesn't turn into long-term change. It might be temporary, but there's a couple like hardcore motivational people. And sometimes they'll scream like, I'm happy. Like, they'll scream it and you're like, that doesn't feel happy. Like, it's like when you're in an argument with your spouse and they go, why are you yelling? You go, I'm not yelling. And you're like, well, you're doing it right now as you say you're not yelling. So I think we can always tell where like somebody's changing your life from a place of hope and a place of kindness to themselves versus I'm fighting myself. It's such a, if you fight the person you are, like, it makes for a really long life. And not in good ways.
Amen. I'm like trying to take notes as you're talking. I'm gonna have to go watch this recording after.
No, not at all. That's why we record these things. Like, and I know I'm talking like a mile a minute.
Yeah. So, but it's also good. I mean, everyone's saying like, oh my gosh, this is gold, because we can all relate to this. Okay. So in the book, you share the new anthem, which I'm actually doing the new anthem. But tell us a little bit about how often you recommend we do the new anthem.
Yeah, so I mean, like anything in the book, I say you do it as often as you need it, and you remix what works for you best. So like, you're the best DJ of your thoughts. I think, like, even if you were going to say to me, I want to be a Beachbody coach and I want to learn how to talk about this thing that I love, the best way to tell a story is to leave room in the story for other people to tell their version of it. And what I mean by that is like, Lazy authors, lazy communicators overpack a story and there's no room for you to tell your version. Great speakers, great authors, great communicators leave room for you to fill in the blanks with your own experiences, your own thoughts, your own memories. For instance, like if you tell me a story about the beach and you leave enough room for me in it, I'll remember I'm sitting on the roof, I'm in second grade, we're on top of my house in Ipswich, Massachusetts, and my dad's in seminary. We don't have a lot of money and we live miles from the beach, but after school, he would take me up there and we could see a thin little sliver of the ocean. And we lived in New England, we'd moved there from North Carolina and the falls were amazing. Like I'll tell that story. So a lot of it is you go, okay, which parts of these do I need to add? Like, do I need to say the new anthem 5 times today? Do I need to say it in the morning and at night? The goal of the new anthem is to put the best thoughts on the top of your soundtracks. So like, that's how your brain works. There's times where your brain just picks the one that's most recent and goes, oh, no, that's right. Like you can do this. Like you do have grit. Like that's great. And so for me, I'd say it as often as you need to, but definitely say it in the morning as you start your day. I say there's 2 slingshot moments. There's one in the morning when you pull back the slingshot and you launch into the day. And there's one at night when you pull the slingshot and launch into your dreams. For me, the best part of the nighttime is that if you can learn to say, I've left some amazing things to do tomorrow. I've left some fun things for me tomorrow versus the shame of I didn't finish the entire day. Because we haven't lived in a done world in 100 years. Like we really haven't. Like you'll never be done. There'll always be one more person you can contact, one more connection with your kids. Like there's another one for my family. My kids, I've got 3 years left with them at home. Like my youngest will graduate in 3 years. My oldest graduates next year. And I feel this tremendous pressure as a dad to make the most of it. Make the most of it. Like I got to do like precious moments, like quality time, like Hallmark Channel movies, every conversation. And it's generating all this stress. And so a new soundtrack I wrote down was treasure, not pressure. Treasure, not pressure. I'm going to try to treasure these next 3 years versus going, oh, it's dust in the wind, there's pressure. And so that's for me, I would add that to my new anthem. So as you kind of go through things and go, I love these 10 statements, it got me into the rhythm of it. If you come up with your own 10, awesome. Like, I think you're the best DJ for your life. Like, fantastic. If I can encourage that, then by all means, like, tweak it, add your own.
Oh, I like that. And as a parent, I can totally relate to that, right? Like, it's like when you're about to go on a trip where you're like, okay, I need to like treasure every single nighttime, right?
Yeah. And then you don't enjoy it and you're not present because you're performing it. You don't want to perform a vacation. You want to be present at a vacation. And there's a difference. And when you're a high achiever, like, it can be tempting to slip into that. So that, for me, like, that's one that I think about. And I know, like, it's crazy. We're already, I could talk about this for like 5 hours. This is so fun for me. But before I forget, I'll give you the link. We're doing a challenge on perfectionism. And it starts the 14th of June. Oh, that's the wrong address. I'm going to delete that. I'll put it in the chat. Here's the address. So it's a 5-day. I'm going to teach 5 days in a row for an hour each day. And it's free, and it's acuff.me/challenge. And it's just my chance to go, here's a big soundtrack I see wreck people. I've studied perfectionism for years. Here's how to deal with it. So, start June 14th.
I love that. I was like, okay, so I'm going to put that in my team group and everyone else. And you said June 14th. So let's
So here's the deal. Here's the deal. Like, so Monday on the 14th, I'm going to do an hour lesson with like a gigantic amount of content. Same on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Like, there's this new way I'm thinking about time that's been really helpful. There's all these soundtracks I'm dealing with for perfection. But I think people come into it and they go, it's going to be 4 minutes of content and like 56 minutes of me trying to sell something. Like, just know ahead of time, it's a fire hose. Like, bring a notebook, and we'll send out replays, because most people are like, yeah, that's cool that you're teaching at lunch, but I'm in California, I'm wherever. So we'll send out video replays, but just expect a fire hose. Like, I said a very few words in this 30 minutes compared to what I'm going to say in those 5 hours.
Oh, I can't wait. Okay, so I have one last question before
Let's do it.
Okay, so for someone who's looking to put, because I think probably everyone has read this book in here, or several times like me. And so how would you recommend, from everything that you teach in there, like, they look at it and they're like, okay, I know I need to put this into practice. How would you recommend they start? Because you teach so many awesome tangible tips, but for some people it can be like, whoa, this is overwhelming. Where do I start? Where would you recommend I start?
I mean, I'd say do the activity where you say, here's the thing I want to do, and then listen. Because I think surface one negative soundtrack, surface one broken one, not 50. Like, and go into it with an attitude of explore, not fix. Like that changes your ability to learn. If you can explore the gifts you have versus fix the mistakes you think you've made, it changes everything. So, identifying one can be really helpful. Also is just turn on your ears. Like when another team member says, hey, here's this thing that helped me, here's this soundtrack, write it down. Like start to gather them, not 1,000, not 1,000,000, but if you hear something that's inspiring, write it down and be deliberate about going, okay, that was encouraging to me. I'm going to look at that. I'm going to put that on a Post-it note. Like write one positive thing that you want to be reminded of on a Post-it note. Again, this one just says ask for more. Like it's not fancy. Like never feel like I never want to give you advice that involves you being a writer, because that's really unfair. I like to write. That there's joy there. But if you're not a writer, that's a sucky solution. If I go, here, you just have to become a writer. Not at all. Like collect some. Your kids are going to say something. You're going to hear a song lyric. Somebody's going to encourage you. Meg's going to say something that you go, oh, that just hit me. That opened my heart to something I hadn't thought about. An Instagram comment today, all or something. I didn't write that. I just was aware enough to go, dang, that is good. So just learn to have some awareness. Don't try to accomplish it all at once. Be patient with the process. Be patient with the results and enjoy it.
That's really good advice. Awesome. I know I've already written down a couple that you've even said on here that I'm like, yep, I'm going to start saying that.
Good. Well, this was a blast for me. Meg, thank you for letting me do stuff like this. I know you got 1 million people you can have on this, and it's always fun that I get to pop on and talk really fast for 30 minutes in a row, because I would have gone 5 hours. I love this kind of conversation.
Yeah, and I mean, we're all going to join your challenge. So guys, make sure that you go to that link and, grab it before we hop off and join the challenge with Jon. Make sure you're following him on Instagram and Facebook to continue to get his awesome content and letting everyone know about this amazing book. And if you got any takeaways from today, make sure you also tag him on social media so that he's able to.
And then I just gave the link to my podcast too. So if you're like, that was a good first, but it's acuff.me/podcast. So acuff.me/challenge, acuff.me/podcast. This was awesome. I have to go be on Canadian TV now. So that's the next thing I'm doing, which is why I have a subtle banner behind me. That's Mark. Like, whoa, hey, I didn't know I had this. Like, you got to be out there. You can't be shy. Bright yellow, 7 feet tall, looming over me as we speak. So you got to share it. You got to share it. So I'm going to go jump on TV. Meg, thanks for letting me do this.
So much. You're going to kill
it.
Guys. Right. Bye, guys. Guys, thank you so much for hopping on. Jon is amazing. Anyone else? Like, I had so many notes. I'm like, I need to go back and look back and like listen again to figure out everything that he said, because I was typing so fast, but then I was also trying to pay attention to what he was saying, right? So I will put this recording out. Janelle will get it to me, and then we'll share it in the roundtable for anyone who's not in our direct downlines. But man, that was good, right? Like, I think maybe you probably all already went to that link and signed up. I'm going to go do that right now to make sure that I get more of that goodness. And how did I not know that he had a podcast? Now I'm like, shoot, now I need to go find his podcast too. But guys, thank you so much for hopping on. Have a wonderful Thursday. Go put what he taught into place, and we'll see you guys all virtually. All right. Bye, guys. See ya.